South African truck drivers have called on their colleagues across the country not to go to work until the government addresses their concerns around the hiring of non-South Africans. Drivers in Gauteng and the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal abandoned their trucks today. They claim their companies continue to hire people from other countries over South Africans. The drivers believe a ministerial task team formed last year on the matter has been useless. News from Africa's Malungelo Boy was also monitoring that story for us and of course filed reports throughout the day, as you would have seen. The Minister now joins us on the line, Minister Thulas Nxesi. Thank you so much, Minister, for talking to us this afternoon. What is going on here?
The truck drivers and in the main two organizations, ADT and SACATRA, have quoted the reasons that they are going for a shutdown because they want a total displacement of the foreign drivers by the local drivers. And they say that some of the employers have sought to seek advantage of the vulnerable non-nationals to reduce the wages and impose bad working conditions. And on the second issue, we agree with them, but we have indicated that we have set papers and we are following that process through the process. And all of it, we must condemn.
Minister, unfortunately, I'm going to come in there. We'll try to get you back on the line. That line there is not clear to you, but we will try to dial you back there. And of course, this is a story that we have been watching throughout the day. You would have seen my colleague Malungelo Boy there speaking to some of those affected. And of course, truck drivers digging in their heels, they're saying that they are demanding action when it comes to some of their concerns. And you'd always, obviously remember from last year, we even saw some of the blockages there when it comes to, the N3 toll at some point. And we also have been seeing them come quite heavy when it comes to, saying that they do not want foreign nationals hired when, in their particular industry. And some of the things that the truck drivers are alleging here is that their meetings with government are certainly not yielding success, and they're complaining, saying that they're not being taken seriously. And the minister there, as you would have heard, saying that it's two organizations, and they had, of course, released a statement yesterday saying that they are looking at a nationwide shutdown. You would have seen Wesley there in the Eastern Cape, where there was also some commotion, and of course they're saying that given the fact that, the meetings with government have failed, they are going to be going back and ensuring that they put pressure upon government to try and get their matters resolved here. And truck drivers, of course, have also been quite angry about this particular situation. And you can imagine this is happening at a time as, the fuel industry as well is also somewhat agitated. We spoke to the Fuel Retailers Association here on the show yesterday, telling us that they're not getting as much support as they would have liked from government, and even saying that they're now currently in court to try and get some kind of assistance. And one of the things that they were telling us yesterday is that, of course, they do not have enough supply when it comes to fuel itself, and even saying that should they not receive that kind of help, they will then also be staging their own part of a shutdown, which they were not even telling us what it would entail. But I do understand that we do have the minister back on the line now just to talk to us more about this particular issue. Minister, you were still telling us about the concerns that are raised with you by these two organizations that are representing the truck drivers. You were still telling us what has become of those meetings with government.
Well, I must say the task team has been working. It has continued working. And we must be realistic here that we're not talking about an issue which affects just one stakeholder, government and the unions. It also affects even the countries of SADC. When we deal with the consultation, we will have to do that because as South Africa, we are not an island. We are working in the regional economy and in the continental economy. But what we've agreed today, all parties have committed themselves to continuously meet under the leadership of the ministry in the task team, and all parties have condemned the violence which we are seeing which is taking place. And also we have agreed that we are going to fast track our processes and try and revise our time frames so that we can be able to deal with this particular matter. But I think it's very important that we emphasize this, that South Africa is part of the wider economic network. We're talking about the AU and particularly SADC, in which we seek to expand trade and economic activity. And we cannot just quarantine ourselves from the rest of the continent or the region. And the economic development of the country has always sourced labor from the wider pool, and South Africa is also a signatory to international treaties and international labor organization conventions, which we have to honor. And we also have to give sanctuary and rights to the refugees. And this is not going to change. But in some sectors, and we admit here, we also seek to attract scarce skills. But this does not apply to the road freight sector. And it is our aim here to manage the use of foreign nationals and to provide opportunities for the local drivers, and also to enforce the decent standards and healthy and safety working conditions in the sector. But this is a process which we are dealing with. Unfortunately, we were disrupted in the past 3 months. That's why we have not been able to conclude this thing, because there was a total shutdown.
And Minister, is there then some kind of a disconnect between some of those that government is talking to and those that are on the road itself? Because those that are operating the trucks on the roads are saying that the meeting did not yield any result. They're even saying that it has failed, and they will continue to stage a shutdown until their demands are met. So is there a disconnect here?
You can ask all the employers who were there. You can ask 2 unions who were there. That would be the SATAU and TAUSA. We all agreed on what I'm talking about. There's only one point which was a point of disagreement, where they said we must chuck off the foreign national drivers immediately as from today. We said, I do not have that mandate to make that particular announcement. It is going to be a process. I have to consult with the cabinet in terms of the regulations which I'm going to be putting to the cabinet. We will have to talk to my counterparts, which is the ministries of labor, who also have to interact with their governments. But and remember, we can't cause unnecessary tensions. But we are committed to say, where we are talking about not scarce skills, we must try and reduce the numbers of the foreign people employed. And we're not talking here only about the road and freight. We're talking about hospitality industry. We're talking about the hotels. We're talking about the restaurants. We're talking about agriculture. We're also talking about the security. So this matter it's a wide matter which needs wider consultation and collective thinking, and also taking into consideration how do we want to expand trade and economic activity? And if we say we are chucking them away, where will we deliver our goods to if we're talking about free trade in the region?
Minister Nxesi, thank you so much for staying on the line for us. I just also want us to probe this issue because it's not a new one. There have been concerns from truck drivers when it comes to the employment of, some foreign nationals. What do you know about, these allegations, and how correct are these truck drivers, or are they simply mistaken here?
We were pulled the employer associations to the discussions. We have pulled them into the table to be able to have discussions with them. And they've denied this particular issue, that these allegations. But we said, now we're not going to deal with this matter as a general matter. We want those workers to give us the specifics of the company which are doing that, so that we can be able to follow them. That's what we have said. But what we also know is that some of the employers taking advantage of these vulnerable workers, and whom they know that they would take any conditions of employment, have taken advantage of that particular situation. Hence, they've decided to employ the foreign
national at the expense of the local. And we are dealing with all those issues. That's why we are saying we need to be specific now in terms of our regulations in order to stamp this out. But that does not mean we are going to not employ foreign nationals at all. We can't be able to do that because the law will not be on our side.
And when you look at the balance, Minister, let's talk about it then. How do you balance looking after the rights of, South Africans that are employed in that particular sector, as well as the foreign nationals who are in that sector? How do we strike the balance here?
Our thinking is that at the moment we must talk about the ratios. It depends what we're talking about. The ratios, it might mean we can only employ 90% of the of the local drivers and allow for 10% for the foreign nationals. But that is a subject of the debate which we are entering into. We just can't have one way to say we are going to do away with them. But equally, what happens if the other countries take such a position that we're not going to allow South African drivers to deliver their goods which they're exporting? Because our goods, they go up into Malawi. That's why we need to take a balanced position which takes into consideration that we can't quarantine ourselves. We are not an island, but also we are also trading with the other countries. So it's going to be a balance, which means, therefore, you must factor in a lot of issues here. You must factor in the issues of trade, but also you must also deal with the Home Affairs, because some of the employers have been employing drivers who have illegal papers. So that's how we have to deal with this matter. It means we have to deal with this matter as a collective of the departments and a collective of the employers, and agree that those who step out of the law are going to be heavily punished.
And Minister, this is not a new issue. We did see last year some trucks torched, allegedly linked to this kind of protest. We did see some roads being blockaded, even as early as about a few years ago. Are you surprised that things continue to reach this particular point where things come to a head? Because it does look like the truck drivers might have elected to stand on here to say government is not hearing them.
We are surprised because there's a process which was put in place. The process of the task teams has been working very hard to deal with this matter. And I've told you, you know that we have 3 months which was a total shutdown in this particular country where it was very difficult to work. You know that we had December in between where we normally open at about mid-January. So you can be able to say comfortably 4 to 5 months we could not be able to work properly. But those task teams are continuing. We've invited the people. But also, these are the issues which are also being discussed at the bargaining chamber. And the three associations, truck drivers associations we are talking about, have refused to be formalized as unions so that they can be able to negotiate properly in the bargaining chamber where the issues are being negotiated whilst we are busy with the legislation. And remember, changing the legislation, it's not just going to be by government. You need to consult the different stakeholders. You have to go to the portfolio committees. You have to talk about, because you're changing the law. So it's a long process on its own.
And Minister, if I can just take you back, I know you're talking about the 3 months where we saw the outbreak of this particular pandemic, and then we had December as well. But you go back about 3 years ago, we saw this particular situation unfolding in Pretoria, where we saw truck drivers shutting the streets and commuters actually frustrated because they could not get anywhere. A year later, we then saw incidents at the N3 toll, and then we continued last year to see these particular incidents again. Some of these incidents, they do precede you as the Labour and Employment Minister, which is then the question that I'm asking. Are you surprised that things continue to come to a head in this particular matter? Because if you look at just some of the few incidents that I've counted from over the years, it does look like they're not being heard.
I am surprised because I've said since last year, as you are saying, we have started setting up processes. and we're engaging in those processes. People must come to the processes, and people must not go to the road and blockade and incite violence, because we just come from a total shutdown. If you continue with the violence, what are you trying to do? And like I am saying, we've listened to them, we've sat together, we've come out with the resolutions, and we've said, let's fast track the processes. And I'm saying I'm surprised if there are processes which have been put in place, which we are dealing with. And those are the processes we started last year. We are continuing with those processes.
And
you can ask employers, you can ask the employers, you can ask other unions. We are continuing with those processes.
And what is government going to do, particularly looking at the fact that there are some of those that are threatening to go back to the streets tomorrow?
We continue to urge them to come back from the streets. We continue to say violence will never be tolerated in this country. There's zero tolerance on attacks, of attacks on truck drivers and other road users. Even if people have a right to protest, they have to do it peacefully. They have that particular right. And as long as it's not violent, let them come back so that we are able to engage, we cooperatively and collectively, we come up with the solution. We are going to come up with the solution on this matter, as long as we are going to engage.
And Minister Nxesi, on another matter, I can't let you go without asking you this. What is the latest when it comes to the UIF? Because there were still some concerns that some people had not received their payouts. Do you have any update for us on that?
What I know is, I might not have the figures right from the top of my head, but I know that we have now gone beyond 28 billion and more than 5 million workers. And there are those who are still outstanding, and we understand why. There were people who didn't have access to technology and in the rural areas and so on. It's only now that our offices, the labor centers were opened, that they were able to go to those labor centers and make applications. There are employers who have complained that they have not been able to get anything. They've been applying, they've been frustrated. We have said there are walk-ins now, walk into our labor companies. And we have committed ourselves, regardless of how long it takes, if it's legal and it's legitimate, we are going to pay those people. And remember, we have also said, the issue of fraud, we are dealing with those, and we long said it, that we're going to follow each and every cent through our own audits. If it means forensic, we are going to do that so that we deal with the corruption. Because those who are stealing from the UIF are stealing from the poor, and they must be arrested and be dealt with by the law.
And what have you managed to uncover when it comes to employers that have not paid out their own employees from the money they received?
That's why the audits are helping us. And through the audits, we're going to be able to pick up that, and we are going to take those employers head on.
And is government confident that it will be able to cover all the claims that have been made during this time?
As long as they are legitimate, we are going to be able to cover those claims. And if it means we have to recall some of our investments, we'll be able to do that. But remember that the UIF is also responsible for a number of programs, not these TERS for COVID-19. There's a normal TERS where the companies who are going to be struggling because of what has happened in COVID-19. There's what we would call the normal UIF, which we foresee because there's going to be mass retrenchments, which we'll also have to deal with. But there must be an understanding that we don't have a pit which is unending. At some stage, we have the limited resources. And these are the issues which we're discussing with the actuaries to say what is the affordability and sustainability of our own funding. We're looking into those issues.